Welcome to another episode of the Global Investors Podcast. I'm your host, Charles Crillo. Today we have Ann Curry. She's a real estate investor with over 30 years of experience in buying, flipping, and developing and owning rental properties across Washington State and Arizona. Previously, Ann was a preschool teacher, earning just $5 an hour, and has since scaled her real estate portfolio, currently owning over 300 units through 12 different apartment buildings. So Ann, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Well, thank you for having me, Charles. I'm excited to be with you.
So before catching the real estate bug, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, both personally and professionally?
Yeah, well, like your intro said, I was a preschool teacher. I was making a whopping $5 an hour. And things started to change when my son was born. He was my firstborn. And I remember the day, Charles, I remember exactly where I was sitting and I was holding him. He was 8 weeks old. And I looked at this little guy and I thought, I'm never going to get this kid through college on $5 an hour. So I better think of something else. I was at that moment, there was just something inside of me that was just like real estate. I know maybe 2 or 3 times in your lifetime, you kind of have just this aha moment. And that was that for me. When I was 15 years old, I was babysitting for a family, and next door to this couple that I was babysitting for, there was a house being demoed. And this was way back in the early 1980s. So flipping, that didn't exist. And there was no podcasts or anybody talking about real estate strategy, really. But there's a house being demoed next door to this family I was babysitting for. And I remember asking the gal that, the mom, and said, what's going on with that house next door to you? And she said, well, this, doctor's wife bought it and she's remodeling it and then she's going to sell it. And there was something inside of me at 15. And I was just like, that is the coolest thing I ever heard of. And, little seeds that get planted early on and they come back. And I thought to myself, real estate. So that was kind of my inspiration. And it kind of developed over the next, several years after that.
Nice. Awesome. So how did you get, what was kind of your first start in real estate? What was your first real estate investment project?
Yeah. So going back to having that inspiration, maybe a year later, I was at a women's group and I sat next to a lady and I just, introduced myself and said, hi, my name's Ann. What's your name? I'm Val. I said, oh, what do you do, Val? And she said, well, my husband and I own 50 single family rentals. And I was like, what? Going back to that inspiration that I had, that it was real estate. And I said, would you introduce me to your husband and can we sit down and have coffee? And that question right there led me to who became just an amazing mentor of mine. He owned 50 single family homes, and I was willing to do whatever I had to do to be around them and have them show me what they did and how I could do it too. So that question led to an amazing mentor-mentee relationship that lasted for about 7 years. And he helped me buy my first rental. And it was a little $60,000 house in Tacoma, Washington, where I live. And it was beat up. And he, just said, hey, buy this house and you're going to fix it up. And then you're going to rent it out, and then you're going to refinance it, and then you're going to get your money back out, and you're going to do that again. And I was like, well, what? And I said, but you're going to help me. So he literally helped me with every single step. I was this, 20-something-year-old woman. I'd never remodeled a house. There was no YouTube videos. There was no how-to. He bought me my first toolbox, and away I went. And all I really knew how to do was put a little coat of paint on the walls. But Home Depot became my best resource because I would drive over to Home Depot. I would look for people that looked like they knew what they were doing, usually older men, and they'd be if I had a plumbing problem, I'd find them in the plumbing aisle. And I would just tap them on the shoulder and say, excuse me, sir, this is what's going on with my toilet. How do I fix this? Oh, yes, come over here. I'll show you this. You buy this little kit, you just follow the directions on the back of the box and you're going to be fine. And that's how between my mentor and Home Depot, people at Home Depot, that's how I got through my first remodel. I did most of the work, almost all the work myself. Took me about 8 months. We got once the remodel was done, I got an appraisal on my refinance, and it came in at 120,000. And I think spent about 15,000 on the remodel because I did all the work myself. And this is back in the early 90s. So prices were a little bit different then. I got a renter. I rented it out. I learned how to lease up a little house. And that was my first BRRRR. Before BRRRR was even a thing. We didn't talk about BRRRR, but that's how my mentor had built his 50 single family house portfolio. And that's how he showed me how to do it. And I did it once, and then I did it again, and I did it again. And then I started to run out of money because all the money that I had was hard money, a combination of hard money and borrowed money. I borrowed the down payment for the first little house from my aunt. And that was the beginning.
Oh, that's great. That's a great story. And it's nice that you got so much encouragement from mentors along the way to really assist you in executing that.
Yeah. Mentors have been, I know people want to know, like, what's the key to success in this business? And I would say that mentors have been one of the keys that have unlocked big doors for me. And mentors come in all shapes and sizes. That mentor I happened to meet because I went to a women's group. I sat down, I introduced myself, and then I just said these magic words, which are, would you introduce me? And would you help me? Those two magic words have been the beginning of all of my mentor-mentee relationships, but they don't come from, really, it's not this formal thing. It's for all of my mentors. It's been very informal. I've happened to meet them or happened to run into them, ask them what they did, and then just ask for help.
Interesting. Yeah. That was going to be one of my questions of how did you find them? But it seems like just out in your normal networking, you told a story about your first one, but you ran into them by doing your normal business and meeting people along the way that were there to assist you through the next step, I guess, in your journey.
Yeah, that's right. So when I had a big goal, I started with a single family, and I accumulated maybe 8 single family rentals, and none of this happened fast, Charles. I'm telling you a story that, I have a 30-year history now in real estate, and things happened slow. It took me 8 months to remodel for my first house. It took me another 4 or 5 months to find the second house. It took another 8 months to remodel that house. So, we have a slogan for our company, and we say, get rich slow, because there's this, misunderstanding out there that you decide to become a real estate investor and the next day you're driving a Ferrari. And albeit that happens for people, they get to a level of, success in their income where they can buy that fancy car. But in my experience, and the people that I work with, my clients and the people that I mentor, it's one step at a time. It's not quitting. But I accumulated a few single family rentals, and then, I'm a goal setter, Charles. So, every October, really, way before the new year, I'm setting my goals for the next year. I've always been that way. And I took the brave step of writing down, I will own a 20-unit apartment building. Now, I only had a few single family rentals, so that was a big leap for me to write that down. But everything that I've always wrote down was always a declaration, like, I will do this, I will do that. So I wrote down, I will own a 20-unit apartment building. And it was maybe 2 or 3 months later, I was at a charity dinner. I sat at a table. I sat next to a gentleman I had never met before. And I did the same thing. I said, hi, my name's Ann. What's your name? He said, my name's John. I said, what do you do, John? He said, I build multifamily apartment buildings. And I was like, what? So through the 2.5-hour dinner, I think we ignored everyone else. And he and I talked and talked and talked the whole entire time. And at the end of it, I said, would you show me how to do that? I have a goal of owning a 20-unit apartment building. He said, show up at my office tomorrow and I'll help you. And that became mentor number 2. And I didn't buy a 20-unit apartment building. I bought a 60-unit apartment building. And that was my first apartment building purchase. And my mentor helped me. He introduced me to a great commercial broker. I didn't have the money, Charles. I was still scraping together little down payments for these little single family houses. But I had enough remodel experience, I guess, by then, by doing these single family. the building that I bought was a rehab opportunity. It was like a BRRRR for multifamily. So we bought it for 1.5 million for 59 units, which was a steal back then, but it needed $1.5 million worth of remodel. So it's just kind of at the end of its useful life, and it just needed a good overhaul. So my mentor showed me all the numbers and brought me the project and just said, you need to buy this. And I said, I don't know how, but I'm sure you're going to show me. And he just walked through all the numbers with me. I went home to my husband and I said, we got to buy this. John says I got to buy it. So we got to buy it. Who do we know that would have a down payment? And my husband thought of a name, and I called a meeting with this person, and I was driving to this meeting shaking. I was sweating. I was like, oh my goodness, what am I doing? But my mentor went over the numbers with me. I sat down with who became a business partner, and I went through all the numbers, and he's a businessman, so he knows how to look for opportunity. And he said, after the 45 minutes of me just talking, he said, I'd love to do it. And so my partner put up the down payment. We got a loan for the rest of it. My $1.5 million remodel only cost $900,000 because I oversaw the whole project, came under budget. So when we went back to refinance it, my partner got all of his down payment back. So it was like the perfect BRRRR. So that was a great opportunity, and we still own that building today. So it was, again, mentor number two. So mentor number one helped me in the single family. Mentor number two helped me in the multifamily.
Yeah. So let's not gloss over a $900,000 or maybe retail $1.5 million rehab. I mean, that is not a value add. That is a heavy value add for a $1.5 million property. Can you kind of go over like what was wrong with it and what did you guys do? I mean, that's a lot of work. That's a lot of contractors. That's a full-time job of managing that property, project managing.
That was great. I learned a lot. It was owned by a local housing authority. So it was affordable housing, and it was in 2013. So, I mean, my timing couldn't have been better because we were just a couple years out of the great, real estate downturn. And so I know that there wasn't an appetite for multifamily back then like there has been in recent years. So A, my timing was perfect. B, it was affordable housing it was a $1.5 million purchase, but it also had a forgivable second. So the housing authority had purchased the building. They had done a remodel maybe 15 years earlier on the interiors. They had gotten a grant for $1 million. And that grant basically put it in the affordable housing category, in that with the acceptance of the grant, now you have to run the building as affordable for 30 years. So when I bought it, they had about 17 years left on the affordability covenant. So when I bought it, I was accepting that I would be running it as affordable, but the grant is fully forgiven after 30 years. So in 2031, that grant will completely go away. So there was we would call that in our world, Charles, the building had a little hair on it. In that not every multifamily buyer, especially after the downturn when they were a little shaken up and some of them got beat up, were they willing to take on something with hair. So I think that's the only reason a newbie like me got to walk into a deal like that, because I was fresh. I was like, I'm going to take it on. Just show me what to do and I'll do it. And I had a great mentor that said, you can do this. It's a little different, yes, but I'm going to put you in the right hands with a property management company that's going to help you understand the affordability part of it. And you're going to do great. So yeah, if I look back at that, I'm like, yeah, that was probably a big, interesting project to take on as a first time, multifamily buyer. but I had the right people behind me, and it gave me the confidence to do it. The remodel was all exterior. So the units with the grant had been remodeled maybe 15 years earlier. So they were fine. A little tired, but they were fine. So we did roofs, we did all the sidings. We took the siding completely off, new windows, new landscaping. We took part of the building had just been unused. It was part of a garage, and we permitted that and turned it into this beautiful manager's office. And so we did a complete facelift, and it looked like a brand new building, after the fact. So it was a $900,000 project, but it was only maybe 10 line items. So it was palatable for a new person like me: siding, roof, gutters, paint, landscaping, permitting the office. So I felt very comfortable doing it.
Oh, yeah, that's quite a deal. That's quite a deal. And especially when you're able to kind of take rents maybe to market in a few years, you're going to really realize the true value of it. So, and
that really is the true value of the building. I mean, as you know, multifamily is, the value is based on the income that it receives. And so we're here right now, but in 2031, we can pop it another $700 a month per unit. So that's going to just, take that building, skyrocket it as far as value. And so I've told my children, I'm like, do not sell that building. Do not sell that building. If I get hit by a bus, do not sell that building. So you just wait it out, wait till we can raise those rents. But it's been a beautiful project. We were able to refinance right away. So it was a BRRRR, a true perfect BRRRR, got our down payment back out. That partner of mine, we just split 50-50. So all the rents were 50-50, but he was it was an infinite return now for us because we had no money in it. And then we were able to refinance another 2 times, Charles, and we pulled out, I think, $500,000 on the second refinance and another $800,000 on the third refinance. So it's been a stellar deal. I know we can't, all of us have had deals where we're just kind of like, oh, we just have to get through it, and they haven't been awesome. But that is one of my 2 absolute home runs, and I've just been so blessed to be able to caretake that building. The second home run was, I mentioned to you when I met my mentor that he owned 50 single family houses. I went home that day. I had nothing, but I went home that day and I wrote down on a piece of paper, I will own 50 single family homes. I will own 50 single family homes. And I kept that little piece of paper in my purse. And I kept another version of it on my nightstand. And I would look at it every day, and it went with me everywhere I went. And do you know that 16 years later, I was able to buy 50 single family rentals in one purchase.
Wow.
They were owned by the seller of that apartment building that I just mentioned. And I knew they owned the houses. And when the apartment building sale went through, everybody's happy and everybody did what they said that they were going to do. And it was a really difficult purchase in that it took about 18 months to put the deal together because they were in a HUD loan. And I think this paperwork that I had to put together was probably 8 inches high by the time we got to closing, but it was a long drawn out. And I knew they owned the houses. And I just said, hey, by the way, if you ever want to sell the houses, would you call me? And about 4.5 years later, they called me and said, we don't want to put them on the market. We loved working with you. You were great to work with during the sale of the apartment building. Do you want to buy them? And without even hesitating, I said yes. I had no idea how I was going to finance it. I had no idea, but I went back to the same partner and he said, I'm in. And that was really home run number 2. We ended up, it was after the downturn still, and financing was really tough to get long-term financing for rentals. It kind of didn't exist. Do you remember those days?
Yeah.
It was very difficult. Now you can get, DSCR loans and it's way easier, but there just wasn't a product. In fact, I talked to 40 banks before I got one bank to step up and say, yes, we'll do it. So that ended up being a fix and flip project. We remodeled and sold all 50 houses in 21 months. I had 5 general contractors going. I was the listing agent. I put all the design plans together. I oversaw all the contractors. I mean, it was crazy, but it was so much fun. It was probably the best project I ever did. So no, I did not hold them as 50 single family rentals, but I did get to hold them for about 20, 21 months, and it was great.
Yeah, 50 single family rentals does not sound like the most fun for a rental portfolio. I know one person, partner of mine, that has 50 or 100 single family homes, and he says it's easy to manage. He has like a full-time people that do it, a couple people, but it's a lot of work. I mean, that's staggered. I mean, that's not much different ballgame when you're buying 50 units or 59 units in one place versus 50 all over, 50 insurance contracts, 50 tax bills, 50 this, 50 that. So.
Yeah. And that, yes, exactly. I mean, it is, you have 50 roofs, you have 50 of everything. So yeah, it is a lot more work. We love our apartment buildings for sure.
Do you have money sitting in the stock market and you're worried about it? Or worse, you have money sitting at the bank, not keeping up with inflation? My name is Charles Carrillo, founder and managing partner of Harborside Partners. And since 2006, I've been investing my money and my family's money into income-producing properties. These are real assets, real properties with real addresses that produce real cash flow. At Harborside Partners, we provide passive investors who love real estate with a turnkey investing solution. If you want to put your money to work in real estate but can't find deals, don't have the time to get funding, and the last thing that productive people want to do is manage real estate. We find the deals, we fund the deals, and we manage the tenants, the termites, and the properties. Partner with us at investwithharborside.com. That's investwithharborside.com. Go to investwithharborside.com. If you love real estate, you like the idea of passive income, and believe that income-producing properties will appreciate over time, go to investwithharborside.com. That's investwithharborside.com.
Before we kind of go into what you guys are doing now, the 59 unit building, and you mentioned something in there which I think some investors, new investors, kind of gloss over. And one thing, when I started investing into multifamily and getting into commercial multifamily, like small multifamily, commercial multifamily, like 5, 10, 12 unit, it was something where you had to go, now we have to do like commercial loans. And it was one thing that was a little scary, I think, for me, was that you didn't have the 30-year fixed product, right? I think some of my banks, after a while, they'd give me like a 25-year kind of fixed one. But most of the time, it's 5, 10 years is the normal product that they give. And I see that as a benefit because it forces, in your example, it forces you to refinance and really realize some of those, it's tax-free, some of the equity that you've built into the property. And you can now deploy that into other places, or you can just refinance it and just pay down, you know what I mean? And then you can just refinance at a lower loan to value if you wanted to. But the reason it gives you that ability to take some money out tax-free and put it to work somewhere else. How are you financing it? Was it all bank loans, community banks?
Yeah, so mostly community banks. I hired a loan officer that, obviously she's a broker, so she can broker it out. And she's been in the business for 30 years and has wonderful relationships with all the local banks. So when it came time to refinance, I just called her and said, who's got an appetite for this kind of product? And she, kind of knows who had the best rate, who has money to lend, because banks go through, expansion and contraction all the time. And, we didn't necessarily go back to the same bank because they weren't lending at the time. So I really relied on her and her relationships with all of these local banks. And if she brought them a deal and said, hey, this is a great borrower and this is a great project, then most of the time, we had an open door there. So it wasn't always about interest rate. It wasn't always about loan term. It was a lot about relationship and who had the appetite for it at the time.
No, that makes perfect sense. I find that local banks and local credit unions, why I ask, they have the appetite mostly for that multifamily less than $5 million, but you know what I mean? Where you don't have larger lenders, especially if it's sub $1 million. But in that area, those are the people that really want to invest in the community. And, they will work with you, especially if the deal has a little bit of hair on it, to kind of get it across this finish line because they want to reinvest into the community where they're based.
Yeah, and absolutely. I mean, every bank that we've gone to has been local. I mean, it just worked out that way, but they have branches or the credit unions that are local. They were always the ones that stepped up. Now I am going through my first Freddie Mac loan for that same apartment building. We are maybe a month away from closing. That's been interesting because I've never done a commercial Freddie Mac loan. Definitely more hoops to jump through. I mean, they're very thorough. But I'll let you know how that goes. So they have a great interest rate and a little bit longer term. So I'm hoping that my strategy would be not to refinance again until this, the affordability covenant burns off in 2031, because when I do that, I just need a little bit of time to get my rents to market, and then we'll have that equity jump. And so I'm hoping not have to refinance again till after that's over.
Nice. Yeah. And that'll probably take you a couple of years after that happens for you to do it. As I learned, there's a rate cap increase of 7% is in Washington State. Is that correct?
Oh, I haven't heard that.
I'm pretty much sure I saw it when I saw
rent cap. Rent cap. Yes, yes, there is. Yeah. And specifically in Tacoma. So so the property is located in Tacoma, Washington, and Tacoma has its own now restrictions. And they are probably some of the most restricted rules probably in the whole country, really. I could go into it. It's really interesting. So not only the Washington rule, but now Tacoma is even more restricted. So yes, we cannot raise rents more than 7%. And so that'll be interesting to kind of navigate that my plan with that building is to just raise rents on turnover.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really all I can do. And I mean, we can kind of inch them up a little bit. And but from a human standpoint, I value my affordable housing building. I value the fact that we're giving a service, but I also value the fact that I have wonderful people that live there. And I don't want to disrupt their life either too much. I mean, it's going to be a complete balance of I don't want to take them up so far that it stresses them or their finances. So I probably will do most of it on turnover and just be very gentle with the tenants. That's my plan. And so I think it's going to take me a while.
Yeah, that's not a problem.
Yeah.
I'd rather, it's expensive to have vacant units and you want to keep people in there, especially good tenants. So you work with them. So 7% is pretty, I mean, it's not that low. I mean, it's a pretty high mark, but it's also it's just one more thing I have to now follow and be aware of to be able to be an active landlord in that area. That's, I guess, what it comes down to.
For sure. And I also understand it too, because they don't want to displace people. So I think it's albeit sometimes we get served these laws that are like, wait, that doesn't make sense. I think that one actually makes sense, because we don't want to displace and we don't want to stress people out so much that they lose their housing.
So let's talk about what you guys been doing now. I know you're involved with affordable housing, as you were saying before. Can you explain a little bit about your affordable housing and kind of Section 8 investment strategy, how it works and what type of properties that you're really focusing that are already in that realm under that umbrella, or are you making it that?
Yeah, so the 59 unit was already affordable, so that kind of cut my teeth on that. But even before that, Charles, I always accepted Section 8 vouchers. So in fact, my Section 8 tenants have been some of my best tenants ever. I think there's a misnomer that just because they have, a Section 8 voucher that they're any different. They're not. You have to just screen like you would anybody else. They just happen to have their rent paid by the government, or a portion of it. So my strategy has always been to be a landlord that, willingly and openly accepts Section 8 vouchers. And the building that we bought was, it's affordable all the way across the board. So that is a percentage of their income. We can only charge a certain amount of percentage of their income for rent. I mean, I'm just simplifying it. So it's a little bit different building in that way. But I have actively looked for properties that would make it so that I can run it as affordable. sometimes you buy these buildings, especially recently with interest rates up, it gets harder and harder and harder to make it pencil if you're going to try to run it as affordable. Now, you have to look at what Section 8 is willing to pay in your area, but in most times, and this is also a misnomer, that Section 8 is paying less than what market is. And a lot of times they're paying what market is, or maybe even a little bit more. So I think people think that you're automatically taking a discount, and that's not the case. So in every market that I've gone in, I've looked at how many units can I carve off as affordable, but to be open with every unit in accepting Section 8.
No, that's great. I think like one of my first properties, there was a local in Connecticut. There was a local it was like an office that would work with battered women, and we had one property that we had put battered women in, and they had similar to that, like Section 8, they had vouchers that they would go with, and they were, great tenants. Only problem I've had with Section 8 is not the tenants at all. It has been working through the government.
Yeah.
The delay in the government. I don't know. Usually they pay more than market. So that's what you're kind of getting. And it's guaranteed. I know all these things, but it's also one of those things there. You're having properties usually sit a little longer. You're having someone come out to inspect it, then they're coming back, they're going here. There's a little bit of more hoops to jump through compared to regular market rate tenants, I guess you would say.
There is, absolutely. And, if you have a learning curve because you've never rented a Section 8 before, you don't know what the Section 8 inspector is going to look for. But once you know what they're going to look for, it's like, well, yeah, you don't want to have outlets that aren't working. You got to make sure your appliances are working. You got to make sure that the windows open in the bedrooms. If you know that, then you can kind of preempt it, and usually you can sail through. But I agree with you. There could be a delay in receiving your first rent check and all of that. So there's just kind of a few extra steps. But again, when you've kind of accommodated for it or, acclimated to it, then it's a little bit easier to do.
So what other myths do you think that come up when you're talking to people about affordable housing? You went over a few of them about the tenants, about the entities working with and everything goes with it. Is there anything else that that people maybe bring up to you when you say, I am an affordable housing investor?
I think maybe they think automatically slumlord, like these properties look different than any other property. If you drove by my affordable housing building, you would think that no way is that affordable housing, because it's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's gorgeous. And so I think they think, it looks different. I think they think maybe the tenants are different. I think they think it's harder to manage. Now, there are a few extra steps, like we just talked about. Every year at my affordable building, we have to report the tenant's income, because if it's over, if the ratios aren't right, then we have to make adjustments. But that's once a year reporting. It's just one extra step. So I think people get maybe overwhelmed because they think it's going to be so difficult. But it's just a system, just like any other system. And once you learn it, and then you just, find people, great property managers that know how to, work with the system. And as an owner, you're removed from that. Of course, it's your responsibility to make sure that everybody's doing things right. But after you find the right team, then you can kind of step away from that. So I think those are the biggest things. They think they're going to drive by and it's going to be like, cars that are broken down and trash in the yard, and nobody would know any different when they drive by the stuff that I've owned that, we've had used run as affordable.
Yeah. And for the most part, those properties that they think it's going to be, those would not pass for Section 8. So.
They would never pass. No. The slumlord stuff would never pass. Yeah. Yeah.
So as we're kind of wrapping up here, a couple of questions I just had. I know before you got your start years back in doing with BRRRRs before they were really a thing. Can you tell us kind of, we're told it's a great way of investing, which it is. There's a lot of pieces that have to line up for it to actually be successful, which you had a mentor which allowed you and assisted you during that process. Can you tell us of any kind of drawbacks you might see within the BRRRR method of investing that maybe isn't talked about as much as all the benefits?
Yeah, well, lots of benefits. So, going back, my husband and I were a family of four now, and my husband's in social work. We were living on $14,000 a year when we bought most of our single family rentals. And so we didn't have a lot of cash. I mean, in fact, we had no cash. We were the family that was driving the old cars, living in a 900 square foot house. We borrowed the first down payment for our first property from our aunt, as I mentioned. And I think people think A, they have to have a lot of money. B, they think that it's going to go quickly. C, they think that I think there's a lot of people that question whether they can still do it these days. Yes, it was easier when I got started because the numbers made sense for almost perfect BRRRRs. When I say perfect BRRRR, a perfect BRRRR is where you get all of your money back out. Every second property, I think I had to leave some money in, and then I had to sell some, to recover some. But I think that BRRRR has changed a bit with interest rates being what they are. And in our area, I don't know about where you live, Charles, but in our area, it's very difficult to find a perfect BRRRR. So let's forget the perfect BRRRR. If you can still do a BRRRR, you may have to leave a little bit of money in, but you still should do it, because instead of leaving, typically you have to pay 25% down, or sometimes now 30% down, to buy a rental property that you're not going to live in. If you can house hack, that's awesome. If you can house hack in combination with a BRRRR, that's amazing. But instead of leaving 25% down, buy your fixer-upper with hard money, borrow the down payment if you have to, fix it up, get a renter in there. Hopefully you've created enough equity spread that when you refinance, you can pull a chunk of your money out. If you have to leave it in, typically it's going to be less than the 25%. Is it still worth doing? Absolutely, because 25% down, it's hard to accumulate enough, properties fast enough when every time you do that, you have to have 25% down. So BRRRRs are still worth doing, just for the fact that you can create that equity spread. I mean, if you buy a house for 200 grand, you put 50 grand into it, it's worth, 325. Is that worth doing? Absolutely. Because you just created 75 grand on paper. So even if you get all your money out, still do the BRRRR, still fix up the house. Don't buy the pretty house next door for retail. Buy the icky one that needs work, put the money into it, gain that equity up front, rent it out. And then my advice to, newer investors is hold everything you possibly can. I look back and if I could talk to my younger self, if I could talk to myself 30 years ago, I'd say, Anne, don't sell any of the early stuff, because if I still owned that early stuff, they would be all paid off. I'd have, they've quadrupled in value since I owned them. And all of that would be free cash flow. I chose to sell off the earlier stuff later on to scale up and get into apartment buildings. But what I'm telling my daughter, who's 30, is, Lauren, if you don't want to do real estate full time, buy 5 properties while you're in your 30s. You only need 5. In our area, Charles, historically, we've doubled in value about every 7 to 10 years. So my advice to her is just get your 5 and then just hang on and don't sell them, because if they're paid off, by the time you're 50 or 60, that's pure cash flow. They've 5 times valued, got you 5 times the value by then, and you're going to be set. So don't sell unless you absolutely have to sell. Just hang on to that stuff, especially if it's, I'm assuming it's cash flowing. The cash flowing, just hang on and just let that tenant pay that thing down.
Awesome. Well, Anne, thank you so much for coming on today. A lot of great information shared with our listeners. How can they learn more about you and your investment and your mentoring business?
Yeah, follow us on Instagram, Anne Curry Homes. That's Anne with an E, Curry Homes. We do a lot of content, free content. We do free events 4 times a year for people who want to start investing, just to expose them, to the investing game. And our website's chock full of stuff. So we'd love to see you on there.
Awesome. Anne, thank you so much for coming on today, and looking forward to connecting with you here in the near future.
Thanks, Charles.
Hi guys, it's Charles from the Global Investors Podcast. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you're interested in getting involved with real estate but you don't know where to begin, set up a free 30-minute strategy call with me at schedulecharles.com. That's schedulecharles.com. Thank you.
Nothing in this episode should be considered specific, personal, or professional advice. Any investment opportunities mentioned on this podcast are limited to accredited investors. Any investments will only be made with proper disclosure, subscription documentation, and are subject to all applicable laws. Please consult an appropriate tax, legal, real estate, financial, or business professional for individualized advice. Opinions of guests are their own. Information is not guaranteed. All investment strategies have the potential for profit or loss. The host is operating on behalf of Syndication Superstars LLC exclusively.